Welcome everyone to the inaugural episode of the Show My Scars podcast, hosted by me, Dueker. I wanted to start this podcast because I, like so many, have battled anxiety and depression from a young age. I can remember as far back as my middle school years, laying in the floor of my bedroom, my lights are off, and I'm listening to music, trying to calm an unseen storm that was raging inside of me. It has boiled to repeated panic attacks and fears of never getting a handle on my life now. Never getting to experience joy or happiness that I see so many others able to express in their daily lives. However, during my mental health journey, I've encountered many others who suffered trauma that, if there were a measure of severity of trauma, would certainly trump mine, and they're able to seemingly live happy, fulfilling lives. Which leads me to wonder, how do they do that? What steps do they take? And what tools do they use? While mental health has become more destigmatized, we still lack clarity in conversation. My hope is that, however big or small, that my podcast makes an impact on people's lives to help them not only cope with their mental health battles, but be able to live happier, more fulfilling lives. So, without further ado, I bring you the first episode of the Show My Scars podcast. Today, my guest will be a friend of mine, Jackie Perry Kornegay. I credit my first foray into working on mental health to Jackie. I messaged her during the early stages of my divorce, and we talk about that interaction and much more now. You always seemed like the brightest, bubbly person that I could think of. And my mom kind of told me a little bit about, what you had gone through in your past as far as going through a divorce and things. So what did you think when I first reached out to you and asked you to come up and talk to me? I was an hour and a half away, and I think, was it the next day you drove up there to sit with me?
I think it was that night.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was that night. And thank you for inviting me. I just remember knowing the feeling of hurt. And when someone reaches out that is hurting, that takes a lot of courage. And so, I was going to make sure that I could do anything and everything for you that I could.
Yeah. And tell me, you've talked to me, in private about, your story and everything. But for anybody listening out there, why don't you kind of walk us through, some of the things that you went through, whatever you feel comfortable with sharing.
Sure. In my early 20s, me and my husband had a son that was 10 weeks early, so he was in the intensive care for over 2 months. And then he has had medical problems, most of his life, so we've gone through that. My husband did leave early on, and we went through a divorce through all that, and then actually got remarried probably about 10 years later and went through a horrible situation and lost a son at birth and went through a divorce then too. So it was very traumatic, very.
Yeah, what was the process like, early on? How do you regroup after something like that and kind of, how do you go day to day and deal with the feelings that you must have had at that time?
Yeah, I think probably the main thing is my son Dakota, I just absolutely thought I had to do good for him. Now, I think a lot of the early days after that situation, it was just in survival mode. Wasn't really making a lot of progress, or I didn't feel like I was.
Yeah.
But just take it day by day, and feel the emotions and move through them, feel them, because the more you try and keep that pushed down, the worse it's going to be on yourself. So try and feel them and just try and move on, because there are better days ahead.
Right. And that's something I want to touch on a lot. It was something that, I've been going to therapy, like I said, probably, gosh, what year is it? probably 6-7 years now, and only recently did I ever kind of make that connection of number one, I think they call it one of the irrefutable truths is that suffering is inevitable.
Right.
Regardless of your situation, you're going to go through something like that. But also to actually lean into the feelings that you're having.
Right.
Because if you try to cover it up or ignore them, they kind of build. And I heard it described as almost like your emotions are your crewmates on a ship. And when they start off, hollering that something's wrong, and if you ignore them, they're just going to get louder and louder, and eventually, they're going to they're going to overtake the ship themselves.
Absolutely, yes.
So yeah, how did you kind of lean into those feelings? How do you kind of let them process naturally?
Definitely through good friends, the right friends, I should say, because you do have to surround yourself with friends that are positive and are really got your back. Or family too, as far as that goes. You've got to have those positives in your life. And then also counseling. Counseling helped me greatly after the loss of my son.
Yeah.
And it was a weekly counseling session for over a year. And you've got to find the right counselor that connects. You need to connect with that counselor. So I would suggest if you do go to counseling and you're not feeling something really positive there, don't question yourself, because I think when you connect with someone. Right. And go with that. And if there's not a connection with your counselor, you go for another one.
Right. Yeah, that's something I want to tell everybody as well. When I got hooked up with a fairly decent counselor my first few sessions, but after I stopped seeing that one, I probably went through 3 or 4 in a row, and it's hard to kind of tell somebody that you're sharing such deep things with that this ain't working out. It's almost like a breakup with a girlfriend or a boyfriend,
and it's hard. It's hard to speak up for yourself.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Especially going through that at that time,
Yeah, and they take it, in stride. I've never had anybody, break down and cry or anything like that. I'm sure it's hard on them, but they're professionals, so they go through that. And just from some of the things that a counselor that I was close with said, they've got probably worse clients than you.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Some of them, go in there and lie, and that's something else I want to say. Like, don't be afraid to tell them exactly how you feel and the full truth, because that's the only thing that's really going to get them through. I've lied to a counselor. I've had to go back and be like, I wasn't telling the truth. I felt worse off than that, or I didn't believe this would work, so I'm not doing what you're telling me to. I just encourage, even if it sounds silly, like, just go through with it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but you never know until you really try.
Exactly. I totally agree. Because, like I said, I think you pretty much realize pretty fast who you connect with. And I think you need to run with that. If there's no connection, get out there and ask around to friends and stuff. You'd be surprised how many are out there getting help, which is amazing these days, because I remember a time when it was kind of shunned, and now it's so wonderful to have that freedom, even more so, gosh, I'm in my 50s, so to look back of how far our, society has come is wonderful.
Yeah. And you said something that I actually didn't know. You said you have a background in mental health.
Yeah, I've got a bachelor's in sociology and psychology.
Okay, yeah. I actually did not know that. What did you end up doing with those degrees? I
worked with for a while and did mostly social work with them and stuff. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And to circle it back around to the one thing that I really noticed about you was just how you are able to smile day to day. Every morning that I see you put Carpe Diem, on your Facebook page. And that was the one thing that just tipped me off. I'm like, there's hope, because like you told your story, I really, my divorce didn't seem like as hard to go through as yours did. But still yet, I just felt so down in the dumps, and I have one of my bad habits is to allow myself to stay in the muck, so to speak. So how do you do that? How do you have like a superpower to just be able to, like you were saying, laugh off things that happen to you? Like, what do you do to kind of keep that positive attitude?
Well, I think it's kind of like a habit. When things are really bad, find that there's always something good. There's always something good. We might not see it at the moment. And there's always possibilities. There's always choices out there that we don't see. I mean, that was my biggest thing that held me back even when I was younger is there is always options. There's always choices to be made. We just can't see them because of the circumstance we're in.
Yeah.
And I always call it kind of like you're in that box and you're so in that box that you can't see outside of it. So, get that box cutter out and get out of that box. And, you can be just a step away, an hour away from some breakthrough, but, you can't see it at the moment. So just know it's out there. Even if you can't see it or know how to get to it, just keep knowing that there is possibilities out there. There are choices that you do not see yet, but they're coming. Yeah. And that's I try and be thankful for the things that I don't see,
Yeah.
Because timing is I'm a big believer in God's timing.
Yeah.
And so I'm living proof of that. Because things have happened in my life that once I let things go, forgiven people that, they could care less if I've forgiven them or I ask for forgiveness or, forgive myself, things opened up. Yeah. I mean, things that just was beyond my comprehension that I thought, I know what I want. And something totally different came about and was so much better than I could even imagine.
Yeah, and that reminds me of another thing I've heard once is to respond, not to react, and to try to give as much space in between what you feel like right off the bat and what you do with that.
Right, and that takes practice.
Oh my gosh, does it ever? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's some tips that you have for that? How do you slow down?
Oh, that's a hard one. Oh goodness, yeah. Like I said, just get in the habit of when those negative thoughts or being so hard on yourself, because I can look at you and I see all the possibilities. I'm like, I can see the greatness. I can see, everything the possibilities that you cannot even comprehend. But when you look at yourself, you just see, you can find out or look at the negatives. And it's like the faster you learn to turn that off and think of the things that, you're blessed with. Yeah. Then run with that, as hard as you can, even if it's crawling. I said, just keep moving forward with that. Like I said, I think there's days that I have like tippy-toed. I have run some days, you just got it. And then there's days that you just, you might almost be sitting still, but just still move forward a little,
Yeah. Yeah. Knowing what you're capable of in that day, because you're not always going to be your best self.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. Yeah. And even on those days, you might be giving 100%, but that's not your, what's your best that you could give, Yeah. But that's okay. You feel that day, it wasn't your best. You did your best that day. You survived it. You got through it. Get through it, because there's another day ahead.
Yeah. This episode is made possible in part by Two Oddballs Creative. Two Oddballs is a marketing, design, and PR agency for any size business. In fact, they made the logo for my podcast. What makes them odd? Two Oddballs is more than a company. It's a philosophy. They don't believe in normal. They don't do dull. They don't build boring. They won't have humdrum. And they definitely won't write wishy-washy. It's not just marketing, it's marketing with balls. Their expertise has been trusted by the likes of Concrete Placement of the Ozarks, Stratford Sports Center, and the city of Joplin, just to name a few. Contact them today for a non-decision-making meeting at 417-986-6332 or drop them a line at 2oddballs.com. Do you give yourself something that I've tried before is kind of rewarding yourself in some way whenever you do kind of overcome like negative thoughts or, in days that you think that it's going to be really, really hard. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, doing something nice for yourself. Have you done that?
Some. More or less probably giving yourself a compliment. Like I said, I think we're hardest on ourselves.
Yeah.
And go, hey, you handled that pretty well is one of the best things I think you can say to yourself,
Yeah.
And I don't think that's prideful. I think that's, hey, this is reality. This was a very hard day. An example would be the anniversary of my son's passing away. I know to prepare for that day. Mm-hmm. It's going to be an emotional time of year, and it's actually in August. Just August 25th, we just celebrated his birthday and celebrated his life. And you've got to find the positive in it. And like I said, I know when that's coming around to give myself some extra space and not be so hard on yourself, which you shouldn't anyway, but
right.
And just know. And it's usually the days that you're not prepared for, something sideswipes you, a thought, a song, a memory, and it really knocks you off your feet for a minute, you know? And that's probably the things that, hurt the worst, and you have to kind of pull yourself out of that. Feel it. And if it takes you a few days to get over it and feel it, do. But just remember, better days are ahead, And circumstances, sometimes, like I said, we can't change them, but we can find the positive in it.
Yeah. Yeah, whenever you can't see what the positive, like, how do you search for that positive?
Oh, yeah. Just keep going. Like I said, just keep going forward, crawling, walking, running, whichever it is. Just, you have to feel it though. Like you said, you cannot keep pushing those feelings down because they will come up and it will be ugly.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, But definitely feel those feelings. I just know there's better days ahead. Mm-hmm. I know just because I have triumph over this day, there's going to be worse ones ahead too.
Yeah.
But I think the more you can, define, look for those red flags, like I said, August is a hard month for me. Look for those red flags, be aware of that. And as soon as they hit, feel them and move on.
Yeah.
It's
almost like surviving the moment. And then,
it is.
Yeah, after it's over, maybe then you can search for that positive.
Right.
And then I read a book one time by David Goggins. I don't know if you've read that one, but it's called Can't Hurt Me. Mm-hmm. And he talks about it in a little bit different way, but I've applied it to mental health, is having a cookie jar in where you get through something and you later on down the road, you remind yourself, I survived that.
Right.
And you bring it out and you kind of celebrate it then.
Absolutely.
I've done that so many times to whenever, because I can get to where my thoughts start racing and
Absolutely.
they're just yelling at me like, that you're not going to get through this. This is terrible, blah, 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 blah. And I kind of sit down, meditate for a second, and I go back to other moments where I thought the same thing.
Right.
And to bring those out, then it kind of gives you a little bit of confidence. And I almost kind of, there's a movie on Netflix called Stutz, and I can't remember the actor's name offhand, but he has a conversation with his therapist on camera, and the therapist names that side of, I don't know if anybody, I'm sure everybody has it, but they call it person X.
Okay.
And it's that dark side of your mind that tells you all those negative things seemingly from nowhere.
Right.
And to be able to name that has been a huge help to me, because then I talk back to it.
Right.
And I kind of get a little bit angry with it sometimes. I'm like, nope. I was like, we've done this before. I've survived it then, and I'm going to kick your butt again.
Right.
And I'm going to prove you wrong. And that, being able to do that has helped so much for me.
Good.
Is that something that you've done yourself?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Back in a long time ago, it was like the little angel and little devil on your shoulders, kind of thing. And you have to tell them to get out, and move on. I'm done with you. But writing down things too, probably two things that have probably helped me is, and of course I don't have a lick of talent for music. I can't play nothing. I can, do a little, but nothing like I wish I could. But music really has helped me. Like you said, meditation's fantastic, and music has helped me a lot. There's been times that I put on that heavy metal. Most people that know me would think whatever, but I do. I'll slap that heavy metal on, get angry, get it out, and just, I love music, and I love, spiritual singing too, So, I just go from one end to the other. It doesn't matter. Whatever helps you get through workouts, you need some really good pumping music, and that helps a lot too. I know I call it kind of a nervous energy. When things start bothering me and stuff, I kind of get a nervous energy that I don't know. It's just kind of like a tenseness. I don't even know how to explain it other than that. Well, if I get out and walk, I usually get that out.
Yep.
So I know if I'm starting to feel that, I need to, start thinking about what's going to help me get through that.
Yeah, absolutely. That energy has to go somewhere.
Absolutely, because otherwise it just builds up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing with music, that's one of my go-tos as well.
Absolutely.
But I have to be careful, because sometimes I will kind of reinforce my feelings.
Right.
That's a very hard thing to tiptoe around, and
exactly,
because it feels oddly good to do that, and I don't know why that is.
Right.
But I'll put on some sad music, and sometimes it helps, but it's remembering that has a time and a place, and that eventually you have to dig yourself out.
Absolutely. You don't want to stay in that mode with that music if it's going to affect you in a certain way. Definitely. Yeah. Because it does. It brings up memories. It brings up, it takes you right back to a moment sometimes. You hear something and it's like, wow. And so you do have to be careful on some of that stuff like that too, because like I said, it kind of depends on what kind of mood I'm in, that, if I need to get a lot of energy out, I'm usually listening to something a little more, stronger. I don't know how to, but usually it's old time rock and roll that I love. Yeah.
My playlist sounds a lot like yours. It goes from one end of the spectrum to the next.
Right.
And there's no telling. If I put it on shuffle, there's no telling
what's going to come on. Exactly.
And another thing I want to bring up, and then we'll close, is that life does ebb and flow. It's it's a cliche, but it does. And while you're down in that valley, that there is going to be a hill.
Yes.
But the thing to remember is that it's an uphill climb as well.
Right.
There's work to be done to get up there. And you were talking just before we started, you've got some things going on now with your mom and her having dementia and things. But how has surviving, the things in the past helped you now?
I think learning, and especially through counseling, you will learn this through great counseling, I guess I should say, is some of your triggers as far as what can maybe start into a downward spiral if you let it. The faster you kind of learn those, the faster you can kind of stop those. And you're not, I got sideswiped within this last 2 years, even with some of them. And it's like, whoa, I didn't realize that had snuck back in on me. And so, I'm, depression, it can come right back on you pretty fast if you're not careful. And it's nothing that you're doing. It's just, you just kind of have to be aware. Once you learn something, you know it. And sometimes you just have to kind of revisit that, whether it's through some of your I'm a note person. I take lots of notes for myself. I'm one too that I'll take lots of pictures I keep on my phone, and I actually have a file on my phone of things I'm grateful for. Like for 1 year, I took a picture every day.
Oh, wow.
Just of things I was thankful for that day. It could be a flower. It could be a cup of coffee. It was just the most normal things in your life maybe that you don't realize, but I was grateful that day for something.
Yeah.
And so I literally did pictures so I could, look back and see what, that was a really bad day, but look, I found the beauty in that day.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I've never thought of that.
Because I'm very visual.
Yep.
And so that helps me,
Yeah.
Once you find those things that help you, try not to let them go. And like I said, I really got sideswiped within this last year, or actually 2 years, with my mom's health.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize how much it had affected me. And so but like I said, find those things that help. There are things, and sometimes it might be the simplest thing. Like I said, a picture of a flower or or one of our dogs or something,
Yeah, that's such a great idea. I've tried the 3 things you're thankful for every morning, and you write them down.
Uh-huh.
But on the days where I wake up, sometimes I wake up just feeling down.
Right.
And I don't know what on earth I must have been dreaming.
Right,
but,
exactly.
I sit down to write, and then I get stuck in, because you're not supposed to repeat them day to day or whatever. And I'll sit there and I'll try to repeat them, and then I'll get mad at myself for breaking the rules, and then it's like, then I can't come up with anything.
And then you're that hard on yourself. Yeah, you got to quit that. Yeah, but we all do it.
Yeah, but to have pictures, like, then you're forcing yourself to see it.
Yeah, you see, and
That's
like
incredible.
I said, I'm a very visual learner, so that really affects me and helps me. So yeah.
And then to kind of end on a positive note, like we said at the beginning, you got remarried and everything.
Yes.
Gosh, that hits home for me, because I really have not had a long-term relationship since my divorce. What can you say to people out there that maybe, and maybe it isn't even, that they want to get remarried or anything, but that something like those are something about those very large positive moments, like
right.
Finding your, the one person out there for you, or, buying a house, anything like that, especially nowadays when prices are skyrocketing.
Exactly.
How do you hold out that hope and not let them go by? Because I think a lot of people are possibly closing the door on the potential of something like that happening for them.
Right. Probably, I think the thing that helped me the most personally, for me, was letting go. It's easy to say, oh, I let go of the past. But there was still things that I didn't realize I was still holding on to, because I didn't want to lose anything more.
Yeah.
And so it was like, once I actually did some physical, mental letting go of things, like, okay, I see this really hurts, but I have got to let this go. I literally, I don't even know how to, I won't go into detail, but literally cut some strings, made more positive choices on that. And once I did that, because it was things that I hadn't really put my finger on, and once I did that, the doors just opened. I cannot even tell you. Things started happening that, I never would have guessed would have happened ever. My husband, I cannot even tell you. You have this thing in your mind of what you think's good for you.
Right.
And then something comes along that you're not even expecting.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, you really go, I did not realize that could even be possible.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. And I don't know what it is, some people, it's God. If you don't believe that there's a God or whatever.
Higher power, whatever, yeah.
And it may just be something as practical as you not allowing it. And
right.
That's something I really, because I've watched it happen firsthand.
Yes. Yes.
I've purposely tanked things for myself.
Yes.
Not consciously in the moment, but oh my gosh, when you look back, you're like, oh my goodness, like I did that to myself. And you don't realize it until it's too late sometimes.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's one thing I have had on my mind here recently. I've had a down moment in my life here recently. I've lost a job, moved back with my mom at gosh, what I had to think there for a second how old I am, 32. But now I'm starting this, and I don't know what will happen from it or whatever, but it was something that I knew in my heart I had to do. It was something that's come up so many times in my life, and that's one thing I'll say. If something routinely pops into your mind that I want to do this, I want to do this, that's not happenstance. If it's repeated, it's something that you really should go do and see what happens from it.
Absolutely, and I'm so proud of you stepping out, because that's how it'll happen,
Yeah.
And I totally agree, because like I said, if I hadn't have took the step to release some things personally and quit hanging on to things that weren't doing me any good,
right?
That can be from a person to a circumstance. Let go of it.
Yeah.
Step out in faith. And failure's not a bad thing. Failure,
no.
Everyone thinks failure is such a negative thing. You learn so much through those. So, and that's my aunt before she passed away. She was one of my cheerleaders in life, my Aunt Kathy. And she said to me, "Why do you think you're a failure?" And I was like, "Well, because I failed it. Well, let's just put it out there. I failed at marriage. She goes, "Did you try?" And I said, "Yes, I did. With what I knew at that moment, I was trying." And so she said, "But you lived through it. You've moved on, even with careers."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, I've done this, I've done that." And, our joke was instead of a jack of all trades, I was a Jackie of all trades. But she was one of my number one cheerleaders of, you did that, you succeeded at it. You realized, it just adds to your journey. Quit looking at it as a failure,
Yeah, it really does prepare you for things that you have no idea are on the horizon, good or bad. It's a way to help yourself understand you're going to survive something, or it prepares you to be grateful for something very positive.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks again so much for doing this.
Well,
it means so much to me that you do this, and I just want to thank anybody that's listening, and I hope it helps, and hope that everybody has a wonderful day.
Yes, thank you so much.